dear colleagues, dear friends, we have the privilege today to have a very special guest on a very special issue. 2 days ago, we discussed about Cuban-American relations, and I promised you that we'll move to another continent today, and we'll try to learn about domestic politics and foreign policy of Pakistan. Our guest today is a very special diplomat of Pakistan. He is, let me say exactly, additional Minister for Europe, which is a very special title. It's, in fact, as I understood, but I'm sure that you will explain more. The most important senior diplomat connected with foreign policy, while the foreign minister himself is the foreign affairs advisor to the prime minister. So, as you can see, from the outset, it's very clear that we have here someone who went through various positions in the diplomatic service. He worked as a diplomat in South Africa, in France, and as an ambassador to Sweden before going back to his country. I'm sure that you would like to learn about a region which, I wouldn't say it's in turmoil, but has a very dynamic foreign affairs agenda. I'm sure that our guest will explain to us about the relations of his country with China, the projects with China, the relations with the United States, the relations with India, of course. And I'm sure that we'll try to explore as well the bilateral relations with Romania, since Ambassador Nadeem RIYAZ had already discussed the bilateral issues during the official consultations at the Foreign Ministry. And I am glad that our meeting is attended also by a Deputy Foreign Minister, Iskandar Burlaku, and I'm sure that the audience will try to ask questions after the presentation which will be made by Minister RIYAZ. Perhaps you would like to listen to him, not to me, and I will pass the microphone to him, telling him that we are really keen to learn about his country and the foreign policy in the region. Please, Minister.
Thank you very much. Excellency, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure being here today. It's a pleasure being in Romania, the lovely city I'd never been to before. And when the ambassador told me in Islamabad that he wanted me to go there, I said, well, it will be a pleasure. And luckily I was able to keep my promise and be here. So I will be speaking to you about Pakistan's foreign policy and overview. I plan to speak for about 25 to 30 minutes, and there's no watch, but I'll try to ensure that I try to keep the timings. And after that, I would really like to have a frank, interactive session where we can discuss things, because I think that just listening to a monologue is not really what is really needed. We need to get into an interactive sort of a discussion. So with your permission, sir, may I start? Well, I plan to, the scheme of presentation will be as such that we have an introduction. We'll talk about the guiding principles of Pakistan's foreign policy. We'll talk about the vision and strategy of the country, the challenges which Pakistan faces. I'll give a brief overview of the relations which Pakistan has with India, with Afghanistan, with the major wars, and then we will conclude by what we are looking at. Now, before we go to the guiding principles of Pakistan's foreign policy, I would just like to talk a bit about Pakistan, a short sort of an introduction. Pakistan is a country which is very strategically located. It's a country in South Asia. It's also straddles West Asia. It is close to the Middle East. We are bordered on the east by India. We share about 2,900 kilometers of our borders with India. On the west, we have Afghanistan, a border of about 2,400 kilometers. Then we have Iran, about 909 kilometers. Then we have China. We have a border of about 563 kilometers, and then we have a coastal line of more than 1,000 kilometers. The country is very populous, 180 million plus people. A very young population. 50% of the people are less than 30 years of age. 51% are women, and 49% are men. We have a workforce of about 62 million people, and a GDP which is $288 billion, foreign exchange reserves nearly $17 billion. The economy is doing reasonably well with a growth rate of 4.2%. We are a democratic country. The last elections were held in 2013. That is when the present government came into power. Mr. Nawaz Sharif is the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and he has a vision, internally as well as externally. Internally, he has a vision of good governance, fiscal stability, rule of law, promotion and protection of human rights. And externally, he has a vision of peace, a vision of a peaceful neighborhood, a vision of having good relations with all countries of the world. So with these very short words about Pakistan, and we can go into discussions on the internal affairs of Pakistan after I have finished my presentation, we move to the guiding principles of Pakistan's foreign policy. And I quote from the father of the nation who said in 1948, "Our foreign policy is one of friendliness and goodwill towards all the nations of the world. We do not cherish aggressive designs against any country or nation. We believe in the principles of honesty and fair play in national and international dealings and are prepared to make our utmost contribution to the promotion of peace and prosperity among the nations of the world. Pakistan will never be found lacking in extending its material and moral support to the oppressed and suppressed peoples of the world, and in upholding the principles of the United Nations Charter." Unquote. So, what are our foreign policy objectives on which we are working right now? It is the promotion of Pakistan as a progressive, dynamic, moderate, and a democratic Islamic country. It is developing friendly relations with all countries of the world, especially major powers and our immediate neighbors. We want to safeguard our national security and geostrategic interests, including the core issue of Jammu and Kashmir. We want to consolidate our commercial and economic cooperation with other countries of the world and the region. And then a very important thing, the Pakistani diaspora. We have close to 7 million Pakistani people living in other parts of the world. And these people are also an important source of contributing towards the national economy of Pakistan. The amount of money which they send back as foreign remittances is close to about $17 billion annually. So obviously we have to look after them and we have to look after their interests. And we want to ensure optimal utilization of our natural resources for regional and international cooperation. So what is the vision? I mentioned it. It's a vision of a peaceful neighborhood. We are looking for peace within and peace without. It's a very small sentence, but it says it all. And I will explain it as I go along. Cordial relations with all, which I mentioned, which you can see clearly flow from the guiding principles which were given by the father of the nation. And like I said, we do not harbor any aggressive design against any country. We are a nuclear power, but our nuclear program is totally for peaceful purposes. We believe in the concept of minimal credible deterrence. So what is the strategy to achieve these objectives? Our strategy is very simple. We have a proactive foreign policy. We neither are aggressive, nor do we want to be on the defensive. But we want to reach out to people, to convey our point of view, to let the people know what we stand for and what are our values. And like I said, that we have a large Pakistani diaspora working abroad, so we do have a service-oriented culture. As mentioned about the foreign service, it's a very small service. For a country of 180 million people, you would think that we have a service which runs into thousands. No, it doesn't. Our cadre strength is not more than 500 people, spread all around the world. And you will be surprised to know that 18% of the people in the foreign service happen to be women. At one point of time, a few years ago, we had 9 lady ambassadors serving in Europe. So that is what we aim. We want to have gender equality. And women are part and parcel of the society of Pakistan. Now moving on from this, what are the challenges which the country faces? One is the image of Pakistan. Then we are countering terrorism. We want to increase our trade and investment. We have a very challenging neighborhood. And as I go along, I'm going to dwell upon it. And then we talk about the relations with major powers. But the first thing, what is Pakistan's image? What comes to your mind when you hear the word Pakistan? I'm sorry to say, but whenever you hear the word Pakistan or something associated with it, you normally see people with a big beard, women who are completely shrouded, a dusty road, people moving around with Kalashnikovs or AK-47 assault rifles. But is that the real Pakistan? From the eyes of some, yes, it is, which is far from the truth. The real Pakistan is people like you and I, a progressive nation. A nation who believes in the freedom of free speech, believes in democracy. Where today, the top achievers in all the universities are women. Where today, you have more than 80 female parliamentarians. And they are not on reserved seats. Yes, they are close to about 70 of them, which are on, or 65 of them, which are on reserved seats. Rest have contested the elections, defeated the men, and come into power. So this is also one face of Pakistan which is not normally shown. We have malls, just like you do. We have cinemas, just like you do. We have more than 100 absolutely free media channels. And they get after you like anything. To an extent, the media is extremely intrusive. But the point is that gone are the days, about 15 years ago, when you could have an event and you could hide it. Now you can't. Because the media is everywhere. In fact, most of the reports about Pakistan are actually brought to the international fore by the media in Pakistan. And the media has a mind of its own, and the state also makes no effort to try to control it, because we, after years and years of having a state-controlled or a partially state-controlled media, about 20 years ago realized that it is better to have a free and independent media because it acts as a watchdog. It acts as a sort of an entity which actually does more good to society than anything else. So one of the major challenges which we as diplomats of Pakistan face is to project the correct image of Pakistan. Because at times the image which is propagated by others is not the true perspective, it's not in the correct perspective. Secondly, one of the major challenges which we face today is counter-terrorism. Now, this terrorism which you see in Pakistan, it has a history. And I will very, very briefly dwell upon it. We were a society which was extremely calm and peaceful before 1979. And I give a date to it, 1979. Because that is the time when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. And that is the time when the world decided that, the Soviets had to be defeated in Afghanistan, because if they are not, then they will become extremely powerful. So flushed with ideology, armed with weapons, a breed of people was created. Not really our creation, we contributed to that creation. The people which now probably the world has forgotten, the Mujahideen. They fought the Soviets, they defeated the Soviets, and then they converted into the Taliban. That's the time when the international community decided to abandon them. There were only two countries which recognized their regime, one was Pakistan and the other was Saudi Arabia. And that is when things started going wrong. You had 9/11, and then, I don't need to dwell much upon it, but then you know the entire story. But this very event changed the entire fabric of the Pakistani society. We were home at the heydays of the Afghan crisis to 3.5 million Afghan refugees. You'll be surprised to know that even today, we have 1.5 million Afghan refugees still living in Pakistan. They are there. They don't go away. They go back to Afghanistan, they come back again. And that is the story. We had people from Pakistan going to Afghanistan fighting the war, and then they came back. And that is what is known as the Tehreek-e-Taliban in Pakistan, the TTP, which is a proscribed and a banned outfit in Pakistan now. We went through a lot of crises. We lost nearly 62,000 lives. Innocent women, children, people from the armed forces trying to fight the menace of terrorism and extremism. The worst years were 2010 to 2011. Extremely bad times. Suicide bombing, a phenomenon which we never had in Pakistan. But it came, it still exists. These odd incidences of terrorism continue to take place still in the country. But now there is a major difference. All the political parties decided last year that the terrorists have to be completely annihilated. There is no distinction between a good terrorist and a bad terrorist. That is a misperception which is created by our people. A terrorist is a terrorist and he or she has to be taken out. With this in mind, we started the Operation Zarb-e-Asad. It's an operation which is taking place in North Waziristan. And in this particular operation, we have been able to take out more than 3,000 terrorists, and these terrorists belong to different nationalities: Afghans, Pakistanis, Chechens, Uzbeks, you name it. That particular brand of people has been living in the tribal areas of Pakistan. And we have an extremely porous border with Afghanistan, which it's not guarded. So we have about 160,000 Pakistani troops on our side of the border trying to ensure that these people don't come in. But on the Afghan side, there is very little. So, when the going gets tough, they just move on to the other side, and when, the going is not that tough, they come back. But in this particular operation, we have dismantled the terrorist networks. We have largely been successful. But there is a particular area which is called the Shawal Heights. It's a high area. And the people who know that particular area know that it is very difficult to fight out there. So we have launched a ground offensive backed by, or rather it's the other way around. We actually first launched an air offensive, which is backed by the ground offensive. We've been able to clear huge areas, but still pockets of these terrorists remain. But I can tell you one thing, that there is a resolve of the entire nation. We will not rest till the last terrorist is eliminated. Because the amount of hardships which they have caused to us, it's only we who can imagine. They have actually killed our children, they have killed our women, and they have deprived the society of a lot of development. Quantifiable losses to our economy are about $110 billion. Foreign direct investment has declined in the country. But then, despite that, Pakistan still has a 4.2% growth rate. Isn't that amazing? Says a lot for the people of Pakistan. But to ensure that, our fight against terrorism continues, so that the lives which we have laid down don't go in vain, and we are fighting a war so that the rest of the world remains a safe place from the evil design of these terrorists and extremists, we have mounted a national action plan. It's a 20-point plan on which we are moving reasonably successfully, I would say, because all plans require time to be successful. And very broadly, off the top of my head, I can actually narrate, what is this national action plan? Because I'm sure that would be the question which you would ask. It is a plan which is against hate speech. It's a plan for taking out the terrorists, ensuring that there is speedy justice, madrasa reforms, and in the question-answer session, I can answer questions about the madrasas. We have stopped the channels of funding, which is we have got laws now against anti-money laundering. we have also taken the fight against these terrorists to the inner parts of Pakistan because, like I said, they infiltrated our society. So they are not in the border regions, they are in the main cities also. So the operations are extremely targeted in the cities because we don't want to cause any collateral damage. And we are taking out these people, we are arresting them. And we honestly feel that we have turned the corner and success is not that far. But we can go into the details of the National Action Plan in the question-answer session. So what is Pakistan today? A democratic country? A country which is extremely investor-friendly. We have a growth rate, what I said, of 4.2%. Most of the major foreign companies are in Pakistan. We just have a problem of getting new, small and medium-scale entrepreneurs and new companies coming into the country. So what are the positives? We have an extremely developed infrastructure, a network of roads, railways, buildings. English is widely spoken. We have got a very well developed IT sector. So out of 180 million people, how many people do you think would be internet users? Anybody take a guess? 80 million plus. How many people do you think have mobile phones in Pakistan? 120 million. Staggering figures, aren't they? But that is the way it is. We have a workforce which is close to about 60 million, 62 million actually. We have a low inflation rate. We have a low unemployment rate. And then, when we say we are an investor-friendly country, this means that all sectors of the economy, they are open to investment. Whether it is energy, whether it is water and power, or whether it is the automobile industry, or whether it is any other one. And we do get investments despite the odds. For that reason, we have a 4.2% growth rate. Because the people of Pakistan are extremely resilient. They just, against all odds, they just deliver. And these are the people who actually are the backbone of the nation. Though we have the problems, but still it's a very investor-friendly country. And for that reason, wherever I go, I invite investments to Pakistan. And the investments, though, they trickle, but they keep on coming. Now this brings me to a broader foreign policy perspective, the neighborhood which we talk about. Hypothetically, if Pakistan was in Latin America, would it have these problems? I don't think so. It's where you are located. As they say, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your relatives. They are there. Your relatives are with you all the time. So like you are in the neighborhood, so you have all the countries around you which are part and parcel of the entire deal. So we have an Afghanistan which is unstable. The happenings in Afghanistan grossly affect us in every possible way. But what is our policy towards them? I will just touch upon these things and we can dwell upon it later. We feel that anything in Afghanistan has to be Afghan-owned and it has to be Afghan-led. Solutions from abroad will not work. We are not interested in who is at the helm of affairs in Afghanistan. We have no favorites. All we want is a stable Afghanistan which will be beneficial for the Afghans themselves, also for us and also for the entire neighborhood. Because you cannot have social economic development in the region without a stable Afghanistan. With India, since partition, we've had a relationship which has been complicated. We've been to wars with our neighbor. But in our vision and our desire, we want to solve all outstanding issues with India, including the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. We want to solve the Siachen issue. We want to solve the water issue. The only thing is that we have put forward our hand of friendship, but it has to be reciprocated from the side of the Indians also. And in the question and answer session, we can go into the details. But our desire is to have good relations with India and to solve all issues on the basis of sovereign equality and mutual respect. Obviously, the regional organization of SAARC cannot make progress when the two largest members of SAARC are not getting along. How can you have economic and social development when there are two major countries, two key players who don't see eye to eye? That brings us to the USA. Well, from the most allied ally of the US to the most sanctioned ally, as they say in books. A relationship which is like a roller coaster. The highs are extremely highs and the lows are extremely low. But as they say, that you cannot live without each other, and that is the case. When it was the era of the Cold War, we were very close to the Americans. Then there was a time when the relationship was at its lowest ebb. Now the relationship is progressing satisfactorily. There are areas of convergences, but there are areas of divergences also. So what we want to do is we want to build on the convergences and we want to minimize the divergences. China, on the other hand, is a completely different story. Pakistan-China relationship is compared with higher than the highest mountain and deeper than the deepest ocean. It's an all-weather strategic friendship and partnership. And right now, it's in the spotlight. It's in the spotlight because of the Pakistan-China economic corridor. This particular corridor is all about connectivity. It's all about development. It's all about progress. It's all about economic development. And we can dwell upon it a bit later on in the question and answer session. But we aim to increase our bilateral trade by about $15 billion between the two countries. Europe, where you are located. We have excellent relations with the EU and its 28 member states, both bilaterally as well as in the context of the EU. In fact, I've just come here from Brussels after participating in the Joint Commission with the EU on Pakistan. Our bilateral trade today with the EU stands at $11.4 billion. We have extremely good ties. We have